Wizards just announced that legendary vehicles and the upcoming spacecrafts may now be played as your commander, even without the Shorikai text. There are a total of 21 cards that now have access to the command zone. Let's have a look at them. I've grouped these into 4 categories, with the first being just kind of trash. These are trash, these are bad, don't play these. We got Bessie, the Doctor's Roadster, Heart of Kiran, the Prima Vista, Valor's Flagship, and Grunt, the Gatebreaker. Mostly vanilla or slightly more than vanilla vehicles that just don't really do anything. The only one that really has any value here is Grunt, because it's kind of funny. But it's also ultimately just a 4-mana 5/5 with Trample. Next, we've got cards that are pretty bad, but mostly just because they are all colorless. Adrestia, for example, might be interesting to play as the leader of an assassin deck, as it provides consistent card draw, but there are no colorless assassins. I suppose we could count the 4 changelings and 2 changeling generators, but that's just not enough for an entire deck. Similarly, the Golden Argosy is a worse Brago as a boat, which is actually a great concept. I always wished that Brago was worse. And a boat. But it being colorless really limits its access to good flicker targets. While I will happily flicker Solemn until I've worn through the table and dropped the card on the floor, I feel like most players will, justifiably, want a bit more from their commander. Sky Sovereign, Consul Flagship, and the Regalia then are mostly just boring. I think I could actually build reasonably functional decks around them. I just don't really know why I would do so. These cards are not particularly inspiring. Moving on, we get to the cards that are cool, which is great because it means that more than half of these commanders have some sort of merit. There are 3 here that deal with tokens. Esika's Chariot is a 4-mana mono-green 4/4 that crews 4/4. When it enters, we create 2 2/2 cats, and whenever it attacks, we create a token that's a copy of target token we control. Damn, that's a lot of repetition here. Immediately, this vehicle stands out because it makes cats, and I like cats. Also, these cats know how to drive a car, which makes using it a lot easier. It sets up for itself. In multiple ways actually, because the cat tokens can also be our targets for the duplication if we don't have anything else yet. But of course, ideally we have some big tokens that are actually worth copying. That by itself takes this into an interesting direction. Most of Green's standard token makers go wide, but Green also has a bunch of pretty cool tall ones that rarely see play. Giant Adderphage has to be my favorite. A giant 7/7 ant with Trample that creates a token copy of itself whenever it deals damage to another player. We could also pump 1,000,000 mana into Hydra Broodmaster, or utterly confuse Gruff Triplets by creating a 4th one, or ramp by creating copies of the token land from Overlord of the Hauntwoods. Interestingly, unlike similar cards, Esika's Chariot isn't limited to only creating copies of creatures, and that opens the door to many fascinating possibilities. While it might not be the strongest, I do think there's a pretty cool deck here to discover. Parhelion 2 then is a bit more straightforward. It's a white 8-mana 5/5 with crew 4, flying, first strike and vigilance, and whenever it attacks, we create 2 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are attacking. This is just a really big beater. Its stats are good, its keywords are efficient, and it pumps out very powerful tokens at a rapid rate, which can also be used to continue crewing it. Importantly, it's a finisher, but it's also very fair. That fairness plays a big role in how people respond to it. The more volatile a card is, the more likely that it will eat removal as soon as it comes down. Parhelion is predictable, and that can keep it safe. It's also worth noting that vehicles have a bit of an additional layer of protection, since they're not usually creatures on our opponent's turns. That means they dodge Blasphemous Act, Wrath of God, or any other creature-centered sweepers. Of course, they are still open to planar cleansing or simply artifact removal. They have their up and downsides. Bringing it back to Parhelion, this is just a cool card. It's big, it kills people, I like it. Another sick token commander is the Pridin, Steel Flagship. This is a white 6-mana 6/6 with flying and crew 2. It also creates a 2/2 knight whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under our control. And those knights can even buff themselves to 4/4 so long as an artifact entered the battlefield under our control this turn. The Pridin is a straightforward enough card. One without artifacts, poop out knights. A big problem that I often observe with artifact decks is that they kinda struggle to kill people. That's part of the reason why Eldrazi are so popular in these lists. They are big, colorless beaters that can actually finish a game. But I always felt like that was a bit disconnected from everything else those decks were doing, and too generic to be interesting. The Pridin then offers a cool alternative. Do your artifact routine, play and play and play a million little things, and next turn, swing in with 100 4/4s. I've also placed a couple of card draw engines in this category. Weatherlight, the Lunar Veil, the Belligerent, and the Last Ride all give us card advantage in one form or another. My favorite here has to be the Last Ride, a 1-mana 13/13 with crew 2 that gets -X/-X, where X is our life total. For this card to even exist as a creature, we need to be at 13 or less life. A hilariously dumb task to try and accomplish in Commander. But it also helps us out on the way, letting us pay 3 mana and 2 life at any time to draw a card. The Last Ride is by no means a strong commander. 13 or less is a really dangerous life total to be at, and its activated ability is nice, but quite expensive to use. Still, I can't help but see the humor in what this deck is trying to accomplish. It's the embodiment of, you can't kill me if I've already killed myself. Still, no new boat commander. And I should say, it's mostly boats. I've seen lots of people joking about how cars can be commanders now, but there are actually only 3 cars and 13 boats. It's mostly boats. Anyways, no new boat commander is quite as funny as RMS Titanic, a 4-mana red 7/1 with flying, trample and crew 3, which sacrifices itself as soon as it deals combat damage to a player and then creates as many treasure tokens as it dealt damage. This is a really dumb card that's actually surprisingly alright. I think it's reasonable to expect this commander to create 7 treasures at least once per game, and in mono red, that can set up an explosive, potentially game-ending turn. Red has access to really powerful treasure synergy with cards like Alchemist's Talent or Reign of Riches, and is generally just good at turning lots of mana into lots of damage. Also, we get to throw the Titanic at somebody. The final cool commander on my list is the Falcon Airship Restored. The Falcon Airship Restored is a black 3-mana 4/3 with flying and crew 2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we may sacrifice it to return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. And then, for 5 mana, we can return the Falcon from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. The Falcon is a repeatable reanimation engine. It's not particularly fast or efficient, but it is very resilient. None of the cards our commander interacts with have any limitations placed upon them. No mana cost or timing restrictions, and no finality counters. Just good old simple reanimation. And because it can reanimate itself at instant speed, on top of having inbuilt evasion, there will eventually come a point in any game involving the Falcon where its owner doesn't really need to play any new cards. Attack with the Falcon, sacrifice it, reanimate something big and scary, and then hold mana up to interact and bring it back again before our next turn. While this isn't for me personally, it's not the most interesting gameplay loop, I think there's a significant portion of the player base that enjoys these infinite recursion engines, and the Falcon is just perfect for you guys. We now only have 3 cards left to talk about, and these are cards that I think are just really sick, and that I genuinely want to build a deck for. Unfortunately, it seems that it'll be around a month before these become available on MTGO, so I don't know if we'll really get around to making a deck video for them, but maybe I'll just build a deck for them anyways and post it on Patreon. On that note, if you've enjoyed the video so far, please give it a thumbs up and check out my Patreon where you can support me directly. Something I do on my Patreon that's a very popular feature is reviewing your decks. If you'd like me to have a look at your deck and give you detailed feedback on which parts are cool, which don't work, and then offer suggestions on how to improve it even further, then you can get that by subscribing on Patreon. Alright, let's start with my third favorite. Veite Completed. Veite Completed is a colorless 2-mana 5/5 with flying and no crew ability. This immediately makes it unique because it's the only vehicle commander that can't be crewed. For it to become a creature, we need to gather 4 or more Phyresis counters, which we can do by having our creatures die. Every time this happens, we also scry once, until we hit 7 or more counters, at which point we draw a card instead. Veite Completed is a colorless sacrifice commander. It provides a powerful reward for having lots of our creatures die. Once we have that 7th counter, everything we sacrifice cycles. Getting there can be a bit tricky though, because we are not in the right colors for it. Veite Completed isn't black. It insists on leading a color-shifted deck. That's not to say that sacrifice doesn't have a home in colorless. Artifact recursion is by no means a rarity, but finding the right cards, ratios, and payoffs still poses a significant deck-building challenge. But that challenge, coupled with its undeniable potential when properly enabled, is what makes this card really exciting, and I think the brewers can cook up something really delicious here. At number 2 then, we have the Dream Commander for an archetype of commander deck that I'm very fond of, but unfortunately isn't very popular. The Indomitable is a 4-mana blue 6/6 with trample and crew free. It also makes it so that whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. Finally, we may cast the Indomitable from our graveyard, so long as we control 3 or more tapped pirates and/or vehicles. This card has many powerful attributes. Being a 6/6 with trample is quite substantial, and in some decks it'll even be able to recur itself. But what we care most about is its coastal piracy ability. Whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. This is the archetype I mentioned before. Coastal piracy is such a powerful effect that entire decks can be built around it. These decks play lots of cheap, evasive creatures that come out quickly and apply pressure on the table. They can then just keep doing that, and they can keep committing to the board because coastal piracy refuels massive amounts of cards every single turn, allowing them to either keep the best possible interaction open for any given moment or to rapidly rebuild. However, up to now these decks had a problem. They desperately need coastal piracy in play, and there was just no good way to guarantee that. Green had Toski that could be played in the command zone, but green isn't the best color for this because it's not evasive enough. No, the best color for these decks is blue, and now we got the Indomitable as a commander. The biggest problem this powerful and exciting archetype had is now fixed. As soon as I saw the announcement, my mind immediately jumped to this card and the sheer terror it can unleash. Finally then, we have the Jackdaw. Jackdaw is a 3-mana Izzet 4/4 with crew free. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we may discard our hand and draw a card for each artifact we control. This is another artifact commander, but with some interesting twists. If we manage to connect with the Jackdaw, then we can draw a huge number of cards all at once. That is, assuming we've built a board of artifacts. But that shouldn't be too difficult. We've already talked about this. Artifact decks are incredibly good at throwing their entire hands onto the table. However, this can come at the cost of just kind of running out of stuff to do. Particularly monocolor decks like the Pridin will suffer from burnout. But the Jackdaw not only refuels for us, it's also Izzet, which is a huge deal. There's only one other boat that's 2 colors. Everything else is either mono or colorless. That alone makes the jackdaw much easier to build around. I also like how it has a combat damage trigger, but no inbuilt evasion. It poses an interesting challenge. How do we get enough artifacts onto the board while also ensuring that we actually get a hit in? Especially since equipments and auras aren't a great way to go here, since they'll just fall off the jackdaw once it stops being a creature at the end of our turn. And then we also have to figure out how to best use our resources and the space in our deck. Discard and graveyard synergies are a natural fit because we're constantly wheeling, but we also need creatures and artifacts on the board and presumably some kind of interaction. This is a deck that simultaneously pulls into many different directions, but its commander can tie them all together. Overall, I really like that vehicles can now be commanders. They require a bit of reframing, since it doesn't really make sense to view the Indomitable as the leader of your army. Instead, I like to think about these decks as my ship's crew, working together to sail the thing across the open oceans of Commander. And honestly, I really like that image. It frames Commander in a cooperative light, which is always good. I'm also glad that this rule change happened because it shows that rule changes are still on the table and that they might eventually fix the embarrassing amateur first draft design that is Commander damage. Damn, it's been a minute since I complained about Commander damage. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. And I'll see you guys on Sunday. Goodbye.